Hey everyone, and welcome back to the PTG Rail Routes Learning series for Train Simulator. On today's video, I've decided to cover a journey in the Class 150/1 unit, which is a slight change to my video release schedule, and that's purely because Armstrong Powerhouse have now released an enhancement pack for this train, which makes it worth driving. Whereas previously, before the enhancement pack was released, this is a train that I really didn't want to drive in on the channel due to a number of bugs and the sounds just being pretty terrible compared to how this train sounds in real life. So I'm driving a full run of the Goblin route between Barking and Gospel Oak in a scenario which comes with the enhancement pack called 1538 Barking to Gospel Oak. The total distance for the journey is just under 12 miles, and this actually forms the return part of a journey which I've covered before, which was from Gospel Oak to Barking in a London Overground Class 172. Our stops along the way will be at Woodgrange Park, Wanstead Park, Leytonstone High Road, Leyton Midland Road, Walthamstow Queens Road, Blackhorse Road, South Tottenham, Harringay Green Lanes, Crouch Hill, Upper Holloway, and finally Barking. So this is an all-stopper, all-stations service. The Class 150s are part of the Sprinter family of diesel multiple units which were constructed by Brell York between 1984 and 1987, with a total of 3 different subclasses of unit produced. The subclass that I'm driving today, as already mentioned, is the Class 150/1, of which 50 of this particular type of Class 150 were constructed. The Class 150 has been in service since 1984, and a total of 137 of the units were produced over all 3 subclasses. The maximum speed of each unit is 75 miles per hour, and the weight of each unit is 35.8 tons. They have a maximum power output of 286 horsepower per engine. Now in the cab of the Class 150, there's a few things I now need to do to set up the unit ready for departure. The first thing I'm going to do is to move the reversing handle into the neutral position. And then as I did that, the AWS sounded, so I just reset the AWS self-test sequence. The next thing I'm going to do now is to set up the lights on the unit. So I want to turn off the tail lights, turn on the marker lights and the instrument lights, and I also want to turn on the headlights. Now, with the dreary weather that I'm going to be driving through today, I believe that I would want the left-hand headlight on, which is the one you'd normally use at night, though I'm not certain on that, so if I'm incorrect on which headlight you would use in bad weather, then please do let me know in the comments. And the reason why I'm driving in such dreary weather is because wheel slip functionality has been implemented into the Class 150/1 with the new Armstrong Powerhouse sound pack. So you're going to see as I'm accelerating and also when I'm braking that wheel slip can happen, and indeed on this journey it will happen with some frequency. And when I'm accelerating, if I get wheel slip, then if we look at the speedometer, you'll actually hear the engine go a bit funny, and you'll see the speedometer jump in speed quickly and then fall back again. And when braking, if I experience wheel slip, the speedometer could drop to 0 while I'm doing 40 to 45 miles per hour, which will indicate that the train is then in a slide, and the train certainly won't slow down very quickly if the wheels are locked up and the train is sliding. So I'll try and talk about how to deal with that when we encounter it on the journey. As I know the signal ahead is cleared on a single yellow aspect, I'm now going to turn off the driver reminder appliance there. And now just to quickly go through the controls here, in front of us now we have a West Code 3-step brake, so you can see there that there are 3 positions after the release, so you've got release position there, and you go to step 1 braking, step 2 braking, and then finally step 3, which is full service. And of course there is 1 step in addition to that, which is emergency, though I won't be using that on this journey today. Normally I would drive standardly trying to use step 2 of braking when slowing down for stations, and I'm still going to aim to try and do that on the journey today, but due to wheel slip I may well have to reduce to step 1 braking in places to try and ensure that the train isn't sliding. If we continue here now, you can see the horn in front of me, which is a 2-tone horn controlled with the space bar and the B key. And then just above that you can see the brake gauges, with the needle on the right hand side there being the brake cylinder pressure gauge, indicating how hard the brakes are applied, and when that needle is pointing to 0 then the brakes are fully released. If we continue around the cab there, we've got the speedometer measured in miles per hour. As already mentioned, the maximum speed on this train is 75 miles per hour, though the maximum speed limit we will encounter on this journey today is 55, and the maximum speed I'll probably be able to reach is 45. Continuing around the cab now, you can see there that we have a 7-step throttle control, so you've got the off position and you can go all the way up to position 7. When starting in this train, I would normally go to position 3 to start the train moving, and then from there gradually step up towards step 7. However, due to the wheel slip I'm going to be encountering on this journey today, I will be accelerating a bit slower than normal, starting in step 2 or 3, and then very gradually going up to full power, and I probably won't achieve full power until we're doing around 30 miles per hour. The next thing I'm going to do now is to open the windows, just so we've got better sound coming from the outside of the train. So even in this dreary weather, I'm still going to drive with the windows open. So we've now got the windows open there. And so now that we've had a look around the cab, we're just going to take another look at the outside of the train just before departing and heading out towards Gospel Oak. When I do look outside, I'm going to change the destination blind on the front of the train with the F8 key, and so then I will change the destination correctly, which currently says Barking. I'll change it from Barking to Gospel Oak. Departing away from Barking, the starting speed limit is 25 miles per hour, and at this point we've got around 1 3/4 miles to go to our next stop, which is Woodgrange Park. I'm now in notch 5 of power to bring our speed up towards the speed limit of 25 miles per hour. Just had a small amount of wheel slip there for a moment, as you may have noticed. So we're now getting up towards 25, and once we reach 25 miles per hour I'm going to shut off the power and allow the train to coast, which I'm now doing, and then in a moment we're going to start climbing at 1 in 63 on an upward gradient as we join another track, and then once we join the other track we're going to have a short downward gradient before the speed limit will increase to 45 miles per hour. So we're just starting on the uphill gradient now, so I'm just giving us some power to try and ensure that we don't lose too much speed along here. I also noticed that the signal ahead is displaying a single yellow aspect. Important to bear in mind, as we did depart Barking on a single yellow signal. The line going away from us to the left there, I believe, is part of the London Underground District line. So now at this point we're just about to cross a junction. The gradient is now started to go downhill at 1 in 80, so I'm going to have to use the brakes to control our speed just temporarily. So I've just made a step 1 brake application just for a moment. Once we've crossed over now onto the left hand track just here, the speed limit is going up to 45 miles per hour, and we can actually accelerate as we pass this speed board just here. So I can now go into full power to start accelerating up towards 45. What I'm going to do along here now is count signals. So at the first signal, after the 45 mile per hour speed limit, we have 3/4 of a mile to go to our stop, and at the second signal we've got around 1/3 of a mile to go. And so it's as we reach this second signal I'm then going to start braking for Woodgrange Park. So here's the first signal now, around 3/4 of a mile to go, and in a moment we're going to reach 45 miles per hour, so then I'm going to shut off the power. In fact, I'm going to do that now and just allow the train to coast along here. We've then got a Morpeth board warning coming up, warning us of an upcoming 30 mile per hour speed restriction, which actually comes into force just after our next stop. So here's the Morpeth board warning now, and we're now coming up on the second signal after the 45 mile per hour speed limit began, and so at this point we've now got 1/3 of a mile to go. And just as we pass the signal, I'm now going to apply the brakes to slow down in time for our stop. So we experienced some wheel slip just there. You may have noticed the speedometer there dropped to almost 0, which indicated that the wheels had locked up and we were in a slide. So I reduced the braking immediately to try and free the wheels up. Braking in step 1 will slow us down quicker than braking in step 2 with a wheel slide. Sometimes you may encounter wheel slides at a very unexpected moment, which can make it difficult to stop. So it's also important to remember that you do have a sander on board the train, which can be operated with the X key, and that just provides a bit of extra adhesion between the wheel and the rail to try and help prevent the wheels from slipping. So here I'm going to stop just before the signal, which is actually a little bit before the S sign, just so I can stop with the signal in view, and this should be about the right place to stop. So just had some wheel slip there as I just tried to start moving, so I just cut the power back to try and prevent that from happening. Departing away from Woodgrange Park, the starting speed limit has just dropped to 30 miles per hour. And at this point we've got just under a mile to go to our next stop, which is Wanstead Park. The speed limit here is now going back up to 45 miles per hour, and we are starting on an uphill gradient on a climb of 1 in 65, which will affect our ability to accelerate, and indeed will also increase the chance of wheel slip in higher power settings. Coming up shortly will be a drop in the speed limit down to 40 miles per hour. At that point the gradient should also be levelling out, and once the speed limit has dropped to 40 miles per hour, we've then got around a third of a mile to go to our stop. The speed limit's now dropped to 40, so we've now got around a third of a mile to go. And I'm now going to idle the power at this point just to allow the train to coast. The speed limit's now going back up to 45 miles per hour. I'm going to apply the brakes in a moment just after we've passed that speed board to start slowing for our stop. So I've just made a light step 1 brake application. That should slow us down quite nicely. On this route I'm aiming to enter platforms at no faster than 20 miles per hour, and in some cases as slow as 15 miles per hour, to try and ensure that I can stop without the risk of the wheels locking up, causing me to overshoot the station. So I'm now just looking out for the S sign, which will be on the left-hand side. I can now see it just in front of the platform shelter there, near the end of the platform. And so this should now be about the right place to stop. Departing away from Wanstead Park, the starting speed limit is still 45 miles per hour. And at this point we've got just over 1 mile to go to our next stop, which is Leytonstone High Road. So between Wanstead Park and Leytonstone High Road, what I need to do along here is keep an eye on the curves, which will allow me to know where I am in relation to the next stop. So we've started on a sweeping right-hand curve. After that there will be a left curve and then a second right-hand curve. At the second right-hand curve, we've then got around half a mile to go to our stop, and then as we reach the second left-hand curve, then I'm going to be applying the brakes to slow us down. So I've just been having some wheel slip problems here trying to accelerate. It seems that they've temporarily rectified themselves now. I was having problems there just trying to get up to speed. So we're now ending the first right-hand curve and about to enter the first left-hand curve. Now that we're reaching 45 miles per hour, I've just shut off the power to allow the train to coast. We're now entering the second right-hand curve, so we've now got around half a mile to go to Leytonstone High Road, and the second left-hand curve will be coming up shortly. So as soon as we get towards that, I'm going to start applying the brakes. You can see it here. I'm going to apply on the underbridge just there. So I've now made initially a step 1 brake application, and now increasing to step 2 as we get closer to the stop. I may end up slowing down slightly too early, but when I've been doing practice runs along here, when stopping at this particular station, I had quite a few problems with the wheels locking up. Indeed, in the previous run before this one that you're now watching, I actually overshot the station because I couldn't sort out the wheel slip in time. So this is a station to enter at no faster than around 15 miles per hour. And here I need to aim to stop at the S sign once again, which isn't too far from the end of the platform. You can just see it coming up on the left-hand side there, just past the platform shelter. And so we should now be stopped in about the right place. Departing Leytonstone High Road, the starting speed limit is 40 miles per hour, as the speed limit dropped to 40 miles per hour just before entering the platform here, and we've got around 3/4 of a mile to go to our next stop, which is Leyton Midland Road. I'm just experiencing some wheel slip problems here again as I'm trying to accelerate away from the station. The speed limit here is now going back up to 45 miles per hour. We won't get up to that between here and the next stop, as I'm aiming to idle the power and allow the train to coast at around 30 to 35 miles per hour. Now that we're doing 30 miles per hour, I've decided to shut off the power at this point just to try and ensure that I can brake in time for our stop. The next signal I can just see in the distance is actually just at the other end of the platform, so I will need to be braking very shortly for our stop. I'm aiming to apply the brakes as soon as I can clearly see the platforms ahead of me. I've now made a step 1 brake application to start bringing our speed down gently. I've now increased that brake application to step 2 just for a moment, and now back down to step 1, just because I want to try and enter the main part of the platform at around 15 miles per hour. I see with the stations along here, a lot of them, looks like there's only a small portion of the station that's still in use today. As you can see, we've got these really long platforms, but most of them are overgrown. So I'm not quite sure why they did that, but it seems that today, probably because they only run short trains along this route, they only use that small part of the platform. So I'm aiming to stop at the S sign just here, which is just to the left of us, just in front of the platform shelter, and we should now be stopping in just about the right place. Departing Leyton Midland Road, the starting speed limit is 45 miles per hour, and we've got just over a mile to go to our next stop, which is Walthamstow Queens Road. Once again experiencing some wheel slip there on notch 3 of power, trying to accelerate away from the station. I'm going to remain in notch 3 now until we reach around 15 miles per hour before going up to notch 4 and then notch 5 at around 20. So we're now doing 15 and I've just stepped up to notch 4 of power. It should start to increase our acceleration and hopefully won't give us too many wheel slip issues. And now we're doing 20 miles per hour. I've just increased further to notch 5. At the end of this right-hand curve, then we've got around 2/3 of a mile to go to Walthamstow Queens Road. And then a short distance after that, we're going to start on a down gradient as steep as down 1 in 64, which will, of course, cause our speed to increase. And it will also make it harder to brake and stop at Walthamstow Queens Road. So I've got to be very careful driving along here to ensure that I don't lock up the wheels when braking on that downhill section. The problem is that step 1 braking is very ineffective on the downgrade. But step 2 braking tends to lock up the wheels, so it's quite a balancing act trying to work out how to stop the train accurately. So we just ended the right hand curve. We've now got less than 2/3 of a mile to go. We're now doing 40 miles per hour, so I'm idling the power to allow the train to coast, and we're now at the start of the downward gradient. So what I'm going to do is make an immediate step 1 brake application at this point, just to bring our speed down gently towards 25 to 30 miles per hour. The station is coming up shortly on this next left-hand curve. It could be just slightly after this next left-hand curve, actually. So yes, I am braking a bit on the early side, certainly considerably earlier than I normally would when trying to stop here. Just increase the braking a bit there. I can now see the end of the platform coming up. We now have wheel slips, so I'm using some sand to try and help me at this point. Normally I try and avoid using sand. Certainly trains have a limited supply, and some trains in the UK even have just single shot sanders, which I think is a stupid idea. And it means that if the driver needs to use sand, the driver can use sand, but they've literally got one shot of it. It dumps all of the sand in the train at once, and then the driver won't be able to use sand for any of the remainder of his journey. Should I say his or her journey? So we're now coming up on the stop marker, which is the S sign you can see here, right at the end of this platform area, just before the overgrown area begins. And so if I brake here, we should now be stopping in just about the right place. Departing away from Walthamstow Queens Road, the starting speed limit is still 45 miles per hour, and we've got just under a mile to go to the next stop, which is Blackhorse Road. So I think the Class 150s were used on the Gospel Oak to Barking route up until around 2007 to 2008. So I just wanted to give you a sort of a context for the time frame that this scenario is set in. I'm not sure what trains they actually used on this route before that, so if anyone knows, then please let me know in the comments. I'd be quite interested to learn what trains were used on this route before Class 150s were used. As I think I've already mentioned in this video, today of course it's Class 172s which are used, and I have actually done a video on this route in the opposite direction, driving a London Overground Class 172. This route is also now being electrified, so we should be seeing electric trains along this route in the near future. So I'm now idling the power at around 40 miles per hour. We're about to go through a series of overbridges here, so passing under several now, and once we reach the final overbridge, which is this one just here, and now need to start braking for our stop. So I initially made a step 2 brake application, thankfully there was no wheel slip, and then I reduced to step 1, which I'm going to remain in now until we're down to 15 miles per hour. I just released the brakes momentarily, and now I'm going to reapply them as we're entering the platform. So I'm aiming to stop, of course, by the S sign. The S sign in this case, you can see just coming up on the left-hand side, just past the shelter there, by the platform sign. Probably slowed down slightly too quickly there. So I'm just going to gently roll towards that. Now as it's disappeared, I'm just going to make a step 1 brake application, which should stop us in just about the right place. Departing Blackhorse Road, the starting speed limit is 45 miles per hour, though as you can see we've got a warning for an upcoming 20 mile per hour speed restriction. And at this point we've got just under 1.5 miles to go to our next stop, which is South Tottenham. At this signal just coming up here, we've then got around 1/5 of a mile to go to the upcoming 20 mile per hour speed limit. I'm now just going to shut off the power at this point, doing just above 30 miles per hour. And I'm going to start braking for the upcoming 20 limit just before we pass under the power lines that you can see overhead. So we're now down to 20 miles per hour in time. We're now entering the 20 mile per hour speed zone. I'm going up to notch 3 of power here, possibly even as high as notch 4, as we're now starting on an upward gradient as steep as 1 in 73. The speed limit is now going back up to 45 miles per hour, and at this point we've got around 3/4 of a mile to go to our next stop. At the next signal you can see just coming up, we've then got just under half a mile to go. And so I'm going to idle the power as we pass this signal here. So I've now idled at around 35 miles per hour with just under half a mile to go. And I'm going to start applying the brakes for our stop at South Tottenham once we're crossing, should I say, the next point, which is coming up in a moment. So you can see there's a set of crossover points here. I'm now going to start applying the brakes, initially step 1, though I will increase if necessary. As we come into South Tottenham Station, the gradient is going to start going uphill at 1 in 98, which will make it easier for us to stop. But then I do have to bear that in mind when starting off to try and prevent a rollback, which is actually I'm finding quite difficult in this unit. And the speed limit is also dropping to 30 miles per hour just here, just before the station, as you can see at that speed post there. So I'm now gently bringing our speed down, and I'm aiming to stop at the S sign, which is near the end of the platform. So I slowed down slightly too early again there. I'm It's of course crawling towards the end on the uphill gradient. The gradient's actually helping us to slow down as well. And so anyway, we should now be stopped in about the right place. Okay, so to try and start away from South Tottenham on this uphill gradient without a rollback, what I need to do is I need to be able to apply power with the brakes on. However, if I leave the brake handle in any position other than released, the train unfortunately won't allow me to apply power. So what I've got to try and do here very quickly now is to release the brakes, apply power, and then reapply the brakes into notch 1 until that power has built up, if I demonstrate now. So I'm now going to release the brakes. And I just managed to apply a little bit of power, and we were just starting to roll there. And now I've managed to release the brakes, and off we go in the correct direction. So departing away from South Tottenham, the starting speed limit is 30 miles per hour, and we've got just over 1 mile to go to the next stop, which is Harringay Green Lanes. Due to starting on the 1 in 98 uphill gradient, that's actually why we're getting a little bit more wheel slip than usual, and it's even more difficult for me to accelerate away. Of course I could use sand when accelerating, but I feel that's probably not best practice, and it's unlikely that real drivers would do that. I would prefer to save the sand purely to use when braking in an absolute emergency, where I'm going to lose control of the train and overshoot a stop if I don't use the sanding system. At this next signal just coming up, we've got around 3/4 of a mile to go to our stop. The gradient here is now levelling out, I believe, and just as we reach 30 miles per hour, I'm now going to shut off the power and allow the train to coast. At the next signal, which you can see just coming up in the distance, we've then got around 1/3 of a mile to go to our stop. We're then going to start on another uphill gradient of 1 in 100 just before we reach our stop. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to allow the train to continue to coast along here until I can see the platforms coming up, and then I'm going to apply the brakes to try and stop. With the aid of the 1 in 100 upward gradient, it shouldn't be too difficult. Then I'm going to aim to stop at the S sign, which is once again near the end of the platform. Thought it might have stopped raining there for a moment. Looks like it almost has. I'll just run the wipers again just to see. Nope, still hasn't. I do know it stops raining at some point in this scenario, so I'm just trying to pay attention to when that is, because I quite often have the habit of forgetting to switch off the wipers when it stops raining. So I can now see the platform coming up. Got the brakes on quite lightly to bring our speed down. We're entering at just over 15 miles per hour. I'm now just looking out for the S sign, which I can now see on the left hand side. We've now got some wheel slip, so at this point is the time to use sand, which I just used just briefly. I'm now going to stop slightly too early, so I'm just going to crawl up slightly further. And if we stop about here, we should now be stopped in about the right place. Departing away from Harringay Green Lanes, the starting speed limit is 30 miles per hour, and we are currently still on the 1 in 100 upward gradient I mentioned a moment ago, so to try to use the same technique again to be able to apply power and prevent a rollback. At this point we've got around 1 mile to go to our next stop, which is Crouch Hill. So I'm just trying to adjust the power settings here to try and prevent wheel slip while also trying to gain speed, which as you can see doesn't happen particularly quickly in rainy conditions or wet conditions in this unit. I also, reading the manual, realised that if you drive in the autumn you're more likely to get wheel slip, much as you would in real life with the autumn leaf fall season. A lot of people seem to think that leaves on the line is just a pathetic excuse for train delays. It's actually a very real problem, and something which the railway spends a lot of money trying to combat each year. If you are interested in buying the enhancement pack for this train, then I'm going to leave the link of where you can purchase it in the description of this video, along with the link of where you can purchase this train as well. So now we're doing 30 miles per hour. I've idled the power to allow the train to coast. At the previous signal just gone, we had around half a mile to go to our stop, and we're now going to pass through a short tunnel. At this point, with around a quarter of a mile to go, I'm going to apply the brakes for our stop shortly after emerging from the other end of this tunnel. So just as we reach this next overbridge coming up, I'm then going to be braking for Crouch Hill Station. Now see the S sign coming up just on the left hand side in front of the platform shelter there. You're going to slow down slightly too early, but it's better to slow down too early than too late. So if I stop here, we should now be stopping in just about the right place. Departing away from Crouch Hill, the starting speed limit is still 30 miles per hour, and at this point we've got around 3/4 of a mile to go to our next stop, which is Upper Holloway. Once again, now that we've reached 30 miles per hour, I've now shut off the power to allow the train to coast along here. We're shortly going to be passing the site of a closed station. In fact, you can see the old platforms just here now. And then at the next signal we pass, the speed limit is going up to 55 miles per hour. Unfortunately, a speed which is unobtainable for us on this journey today. And it's around the area of that next signal where I'm going to start applying the brakes for Upper Holloway Station. So we're now passing the signal and the speed limit's going up to 55 miles per hour, and I've now got the brakes on. Initially step 1 I'm going to increase slightly, as I believe the platform starts just after this overbridge, so I want to be going slow enough by the time we enter the platform. Here at Upper Holloway I'm aiming to stop at the S sign, which is around halfway along the platform. And so we should now be stopping in about the right place. Departing away from Upper Holloway, the starting speed limit is 55 miles per hour, and we've got just over a mile to go to our next and final stop, which is Gospel Oak. So I'm now bringing our speed up towards 40 miles per hour, and then I'm going to idle at 40 miles per hour, as the speed limit will be dropping to that very shortly. Once we pass the 40 mile per hour speed board, we've then got just over a third of a mile to go to an upcoming 20 mile per hour speed limit. So just passing the warning for the 40 speed limit now. So I'm now allowing our speed to build up towards 40 miles per hour, and in a moment I'm going to shut off the power and allow the train to coast. We're also about to start climbing at 1 in 100, which will help us to slow down a bit. The speed limit's now dropped to 40, and we're now passing the 20 mile per hour speed restriction warning, which is a third of a mile from the limit itself. I'm continuing to coast to allow the train to lose speed, and then I'm going to brake for the 20 mile per hour speed limit, approaching the next signal, which you can see just coming up. Just made a step 1 brake application approaching the signal. We're now down to 20 miles per hour just before passing the 20 mile per hour speed board. It's going to give us a tiny bit of power here, though I think the gradient is levelling out in a moment. We're now on a sharp, well, we're now about to enter, should I say, a sharp right-hand curve. And just around the area of the end of the curve, we're going to be encountering a 15 mile per hour speed restriction as we turn in towards the bay platform at Gospel Oak Station. So now just applying the brakes lightly to bring our speed down to 15 in time. So we're now down to 15 miles per hour. I'm going to brake further in a moment just to ensure that we enter the platform here at no faster than 10 miles per hour, as it is a bay platform. So we're now down to 10 miles per hour, and now I'm just going to gradually bring our speed off to aim to stop by the S sign, which you can see just coming up on the left hand side a little bit before the buffer stops at the end of the track here. Just fanning the brakes there between idle, should I say released, and step 1 brake, and we should now be stopping in just about the right place. So here we are, arrival at Gospel Oak. Thank you very much for watching this video. I really do hope that you did enjoy it. If you did, then please don't forget to like and subscribe. Also, please don't forget that for the latest channel updates, you can find me on Facebook, with the link to my Facebook profile being in the description of this video. And also, if you'd like to sponsor what I do, then please visit my Patreon page for more information. Again, the link to that is in the description of this video. And also in the description of this video, I'm going to place a link to purchase both the Class 150 and the Class 150 enhancement pack from Armstrong Powerhouse. Once again, thank you very much for watching.